You stand over a simple little pitch shot, 50 yards to the pin, nothing between you and the green but air, and you chunk it, or you scull it clean over. I lived that nightmare for 30 years. Here is the truth nobody told me. The wedge in your bag is the most powerful stroke-saving club you own, and almost every senior golfer uses it exactly backward. I found out by accident, standing on a practice green at 61 years old. Before we finish, I am going to hand you a secret hidden inside a club invented in 1932, a design its own creator kept buried in his bag on purpose. And every bit of this works with the same wedge you already own right now. Let me take you back to that practice green. I had just paid $200 for a lesson. A young pro, maybe 25, watched me hit 10 pitch shots. He watched me chunk 4, blade 3, and get lucky on the other 3. Then he said something that stuck in my chest like a thorn. He said, "You are trying to lift the ball. The club already does that for you." I did not understand him. Not that day. I nodded like I did because I was embarrassed. And I went home and kept doing the exact same thing for another 2 years. That is 2 years of lost strokes. 2 years of walking off the 9th green doing math in my head about what could have been. 2 years of my buddies giving me that quiet look when I flubbed another easy one from 40 yards out. If you have felt that particular sting, the short one, the one that comes from a shot you knew you should have made, then lean in. Because what that young pro was trying to tell me is the first secret, and it is the foundation for everything else. Here it is. Your wedge has a hidden part on the bottom called the bounce. It is the rounded metal on the sole behind the sharp front edge, and that piece of metal is the single most misunderstood thing in golf. Most of us, especially those of us who learned the game in the 1960s and 70s, were taught to hit down on the ball, squeeze it, take a divot, punch it low and let it check. But when you drive that sharp leading edge straight into the ground behind the ball, the edge digs, it knifes into the turf, and that is your chunk. That is the fat shot that goes 10 feet and dies. The bounce was designed to stop exactly that. It is meant to skid across the turf, not dig into it. It works like the hull of a boat, gliding over the surface instead of plowing under it. Now here is where it gets interesting, and here is where I want you to understand that this was not always a secret. It was common knowledge among the best players of a certain era, and then it quietly disappeared from how the average person was taught. The bounce was invented in 1932. A professional golfer had gotten sick of failing to escape from sand traps the way you and I get sick of failing from 40 yards, and what he did to fix it changed golf forever. I will tell you exactly who he was, and the strange place he got the idea before we are done, because that story is the whole key, and it is stranger than you would ever guess. For now, understand this. When you set up to a pitch, stop trying to help the ball into the air. Let the bottom of the club thump the grass and slide. The loft on the face, all 54 or 56 degrees of it, does the lifting. Your only job is to deliver the club and get out of its way. The day I finally trusted that, I hit 3 pitch shots in a row that landed soft and rolled to the hole. 3 in a row. After 30 years, I actually laughed out loud on an empty range like a fool. But trusting the bounce is only step 1. Because I still had a bigger problem, and it was quietly costing me more strokes than the chunk ever did. My distances were a guess. Every single time. I would stand over a shot and think, this is kind of a hard one and kind of a soft one, and I would just swing and hope. Sometimes it flew the green, sometimes it came up 15 yards short. I had no control, and here's the part that hurt once I understood it. The pros were not guessing. They had a system. And that system had been written down and published where anyone could read it, and somehow I had missed it for my entire adult life. The system is called the clock, and it changed my scores more than any new club I ever bought. Here is how I had been doing it wrong. I used one swing, full power, for every wedge, and I tried to control distance by swinging softer or harder in the moment. That is like trying to pour exactly half a cup of coffee by feel with your eyes closed. You will be wrong most of the time. The clock method throws that whole approach out. Picture yourself standing in the middle of a giant clock face. Your head is at the top, 12 o'clock. The ground beneath you is 6 o'clock. Now, instead of thinking about power, you think only about where your lead arm stops on the backswing. If your arm swings back to where it points at 7 or 8 o'clock low, that is your short shot. If it swings up to 9 o'clock, arm parallel to the ground, that is your medium shot. If it goes back to 10 or 11 o'clock, that is your long wedge shot. 3 swings, 3 lengths, and here is the beautiful part. Each of those swings with each of your wedges flies a specific, repeatable distance every single time. This did not come from nowhere. A short game researcher named Dave Pelz spent years studying this. He had actually worked as a scientist before he devoted his life to the short game, and he brought that measuring mind to it. He published his findings in a book called The Short Game Bible in 1999, and what he found in his research still stuns me. Pelz measured thousands of golfers, and he discovered that the average player loses more strokes to par inside 100 yards of the hole than anywhere else on the course. Not off the tee, not with the long irons. Right there, in the scoring zone, where you would think it should be easy. We spend our money on drivers to gain 10 yards we barely use. Meanwhile, the strokes are bleeding out of us right in front of the green, 40 and 50 and 60 yards from the pin, and nobody sold us the fix because the fix does not cost anything. That is the part that started to make me angry. And I am going to come back to why this simple, free knowledge got buried while expensive fixes got shouted from every magazine cover. Because someone profited from you and me guessing instead of knowing. But first, let me tell you how I built my own clock, because you can do this yourself with nothing but the clubs in your garage. I took my sand wedge, my gap wedge, and my pitching wedge out to an open field. Not even a range, just a field with a fence post I could aim at. I made my 9 o'clock swing, arm parallel to the ground, 10 times with each club. I paced off the average. For me, my sand wedge at 9 o'clock flew about 50 yards. My gap wedge about 65, my pitching wedge about 80. I wrote those numbers on a little piece of masking tape and stuck it on the shaft of each club. Now, out on the course, I do not guess anymore. I see 65 yards to the flag, I pull the gap wedge, I make my 9 o'clock swing, and I trust it. The ball flies 65 yards. It is almost boring how well it works. That right there, that one afternoon in a field, took more strokes off my game than the previous 10 years of frustration combined. But knowing your distance means nothing if the ball is squirting off the club in the wrong direction. And that brings me to the third secret, which is about a mistake so common I would bet money you are making it right now at address before you even swing. It is where you put the ball in your stance, and where you put your hands. For most of my life, I set up to a wedge the way I set up to every other club. Ball in the middle of my stance, hands right over the ball, nice and neutral. It felt balanced. It felt correct. It was wrong for the shot I was trying to hit. Here is what I learned. For a standard pitch shot, the ball should sit back of center toward your right foot if you are a right-handed player. And your hands, the grip end of the club, should be ahead of the ball, leaning toward the target so the shaft tilts forward. That forward lean does something magical. It presses the loft down slightly, it puts the leading edge in the right place, and it lets that bounce we talked about do its job of skidding through the grass. It makes solid contact almost automatic because your hands are leading and the club head is following, instead of the club head flipping past your hands and adding a chunk or a skull. When I flipped, my wrists broke down through impact. The club passed my hands. Sometimes it dug, sometimes it caught the ball thin. It was a coin flip every time. Once I learned to keep my hands ahead and the shaft leaning toward the target through the strike, the coin flip stopped. Now, there is history here that surprised me. This idea of leading with the hands is not some modern swing theory dreamed up by a computer. Old instruction manuals from the 1920s and 30s described the same thing. They called it hitting the little shot crisply, hands ahead, taking the turf after the ball. The knowledge was there almost 100 years ago. It just got watered down and lost as the game got sold to millions of new players who wanted a quick fix instead of a fundamental. Let me give you the simplest way I know to feel this. Take your address position over a wedge. Now, without moving your feet, push your hands forward until the grip is pointing at your lead pocket, the pocket on your target side. Feel how the shaft leans. That is the position you want to return to at impact. Rehearse it in your living room tonight. You do not even need a ball. And here is the thing that made it all click for me. When your hands lead and the shaft leans forward, you can actually swing with a little authority. You do not have to make that timid, decelerating baby swing that we all make when we are scared of the shot. Deceleration, slowing the club down before impact because you are afraid, is the true killer of the short game. And I have to be honest with you about something, friend. What I have just handed you, the bounce and the clock, is the free version, and it works. But there is only so much a man can fit into one video, so I sat down and wrote out the whole thing properly, every protocol I tested on myself, in a small collection of books for men our age who are done being told it is just their birthday causing all this. In there, you get the ball position ruler measured out step by step, which ball actually helps you around the green, the honest answer on launch monitors and gadgets before you spend a penny, and the whole system for thin wedges, feared hybrids, and those 4-footers that keep slipping past. Nothing to buy for your bag, nothing to order, nothing to be sold to you. It all works this weekend with the clubs already sitting in your garage. If you want it, scan the QR code right there on your screen. Link in the description, pinned comment. Now, back to that setup, because there is one more piece I have not shown you yet. I know that fear. I lived in it. The little 40-yard pitch used to terrify me more than a 200-yard carry over water, because I knew deep down I might embarrass myself. So let me talk directly to you now. If you are the person thinking all of this sounds like too much work, if you are thinking, that is fine for people who practice, but I only play once a week, and I am not about to become a range rat at my age. I hear you. That was my exact objection. I did not want a project. I wanted to enjoy my golf. So, this next part is for you specifically, and it is the one thing you can do this week with the wedge already in your bag without a single trip to the practice range. Here it is. The next time you play, on every pitch and chip inside 40 yards, I want you to do only 2 things. Move the ball back in your stance toward your back foot and push your hands forward so the grip points at your front pocket. That is it. That is the whole assignment. Do not think about the clock. Do not think about bounce angles or degrees of loft. Just those 2 setup changes, made before you swing, while you are standing still, when there is no pressure and nothing moving. You are not changing your swing. You are changing your setup. And your setup is the one part of golf you have complete, unhurried control over. Nobody can rush you. Nobody is watching the 2 seconds it takes to nudge the ball back and press your hands forward. I promise you, the very first round you do this, you will catch 2 or 3 little shots more cleanly than you have in years. The chunks will start to disappear on their own because you have physically moved the low point of your swing to the right place. You did not have to earn it with 100 practice balls. You just had to know where to stand. That single tip, the setup fix, is the one I wish someone had shouted at me across the fence 20 years ago. It would have saved me thousands of dollars in lessons and gadgets and, worse, thousands of small humiliations in front of my friends. Now, once you feel that cleaner contact, you are going to want more. You are going to want the full toolkit. And there is one more secret before the big one, a secret about the face of the club that unlocks the most useful shot in golf. It is this. You are allowed to open the face. Most senior golfers I know grip the wedge with the face pointing dead straight, square to the target, exactly like a 7-iron. And for most shots, that is fine. But the wedge was built to do something no other club can do, and it only does it when you rotate that face open, so it points slightly to the right of the target, toward the sky. When you open the face, you expose the bounce. You add loft. You turn your 56-degree wedge into something closer to 60 degrees, and you get a shot that flies higher and lands softer, like a butterfly with sore feet. This is the shot for when you are short-sighted, when the pin is tucked right behind a bunker and you have no green to work with. Square-faced, that ball releases and rolls off the back. Open-faced, it climbs, drops, and stops. Here is the trick that took me forever to learn. You open the face first by rotating the club in your hands before you take your grip. Then you grip it. If you take your normal grip and try to twist your hands open at address, you will just twist it back to square during the swing. The openness has to be built into your grip from the start. And when you open that face, you must aim your body a little left to compensate, because an open face sends the ball right. Aim your feet and shoulders left of the target, open the face at the pin, and swing along your body line. The ball floats up and comes down soft. Try it in the backyard with a wiffle ball first if you are nervous. You will see that little ball pop straight up in a way that will make you grin. It feels like cheating. It is not cheating. It is just using the club the way it was actually designed to be used, the way the man who invented it intended. And now I owe you that story. Because everything I have told you, the bounce, the soft landing, the escape from sand, all of it traces back to one man, one moment, and one deeply strange source of inspiration that almost nobody talks about. The year was 1932. The golfer was Gene Sarazen, one of the greatest players of his era. And Sarazen had a problem that will sound very familiar to you and me. He was terrible out of sand traps. The clubs of that day had a sharp, flat sole with no bounce at all, so they dug straight into the sand and buried the ball. Getting out was a disaster every time. Now here is the part that stuns everyone I tell it to. Around that same time, Sarazen had taken up flying. He was learning to pilot an airplane, and he was up in the air with the millionaire Howard Hughes, of all people, paying attention to how the plane behaved. And he noticed something. When the pilot pulled back on the controls to take off, the tail of the plane dropped down and the nose lifted up, and that angle is what let the plane rise into the air. The tail, angled down, created lift. Sarazen looked at that and had the idea of his life. What if he added a piece of metal to the back of his sand club, a flange, angled down like the tail of that airplane? What if the back edge, not the front edge, was the lowest point? Then the club would ride up and out of the sand instead of digging down into it. He went home and he soldered lead onto the back sole of a niblick, building up that flange by hand. He experimented until the trailing edge sat lower than the leading edge. And that right there is the bounce. He had invented the modern sand wedge in his own workshop, inspired by watching an airplane take off. But here is the detail that ties this whole video together, the buried piece of it. Sarazen kept the club a secret. He knew what he had. He knew it was a weapon, so he hid it. There are accounts that he kept it concealed in his bag, worried that officials might rule it illegal, or that rivals would copy it before he could use it to win. And use it he did. In 1932, carrying that homemade, hidden club, Gene Sarazen won the British Open and the United States Open in the same year. Both of them, with a club he built on a workbench because he was tired of failing from the sand, the same way you and I are tired of failing from 40 yards. Think about what that means. The single most helpful piece of technology in your golf bag, the bounce on your wedge, was born from an idea a frustrated man got by looking up at an airplane, and he was so sure of its power that he hid it from the world. So here is your secret finale, the thing to try this weekend, drawn straight from Sarazen's original discovery. Most of us, in the sand, try to lift the ball out with the sharp front edge. We chop down at it, terrified, and we either blade it across the green or leave it in the trap. Do the opposite of what feels natural. In the sand, open the face of your wedge wide, so the bounce, that back flange Sarazen invented, is pointing down at the sand. Aim your body left, and then do the thing that terrifies everyone. Swing with confidence and hit the sand about 2 inches behind the ball, letting the bounce slap the sand and skid underneath. You never touch the ball. You hit the sand, and the sand throws the ball out. The bounce keeps the club from digging, so it splashes through instead of burying. That flange, that little angled piece of metal born from an airplane's tail in 1932, does all the work if you let it point down and trust it. The first time I did this correctly, the ball floated out of the bunker, landed like a feather, and rolled to 3 feet. I had spent 40 years afraid of sand. 40 years. And the fix was to point the bottom of the club at the sand and swing without fear, exactly as the inventor designed it to be used before the knowledge got muddied and lost. That is the whole thread. A method existed. It was built by a frustrated man who refused to keep losing. It won 2 national championships, and then, over the decades, as golf got sold to the masses with promises of easy power and expensive equipment, the simple truth of how to actually use the thing quietly slipped away. It got preserved in old books and dusty instruction, waiting, and now it is yours. You do not need a new $60 wedge. You do not need another lesson. You need to point the bounce down, put the ball back, lead with your hands, learn your 3 o'clock distances, and trust the club that Gene Sarazen built to save you. Here's what I want you to feel right now. That sting you get walking off the green after a wasted shot, that quiet little defeat, you do not have to carry it anymore. It was never your talent that was missing. It was one piece of knowledge that somebody let slip out of sight. If you are the kind of person who has always suspected that the simplest, oldest, cheapest answer was the real one, buried under everything they were trying to sell you, then you and I are cut from the same cloth. This channel is for us, the ones who would rather recover a lost skill than buy a shiny gadget that does not fix a thing. Now do one thing for me. Tell me down in the comments which of these you are going to try first. Is it the clock system for your distances? Or is it Sarazen's open-face bounce shot out of the sand? Just type the one word, clock or bounce, so I know which secret hit home for you. And if you learned to play back in the day when they told you to hit down and dig, tell me that too, because I want to know how many of us were taught the very thing that was holding us back. Subscribe and stand with the rest of us who are digging up the practical, forgotten skills that earlier generations knew and the marketing machine made us forget. We are quietly taking this knowledge back, one buried secret at a time. And next time, I am going to show you the forgotten putting method from the 1950s that cured the yips for an entire generation of players, a drill you can do on your living room carpet tonight with a single coin. You will not believe how simple it is, or who tried to bury it. Stay with me. The best kept secrets are the oldest ones. Before you go, let me tell you what waits inside the Old Ways circle. This video showed you the bounce. Inside, you get the full wedge system, every distance dialed in. And you can ask me your own questions, a real person, me, answering you myself. You won't be doing this alone. Folks like you are already in there. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel any time, one click. Come join me. Now that your wedges are sharper, let me help you off the tee. In the next video, I'll show you 5 simple driver secrets that add real yards without swinging harder. It's starting right here, so stay with me.